Welcome to Qatar KickAround, the nightly wrap-up and discussion of the day's action in the 2022 World Cup. From the group stage to the final, our team is here, keeping you on top of the world's most watched sporting event. Brought to you by Westwood One Sports.
Hi-de-ho, and welcome to a very special edition of Calm Down, Greg, It's Just Soccer. No, actually. It's Matchday 9 of Qatar. You don't get that reference? That's a classic Superbad reference. You don't get that? I can't believe it. There's my mom texting me, Go USA. I love it. Hold on, I probably need to switch this. Make sure nobody
Should you reply? We'll wait.
No, Mom can wait.
This is a very chaotic opening, Peter.
No, that's okay. This is
Matchday
9, Qatar Kick-Around, the wrap-up show, our daily
wrap-up show.
wrap-up
You just lost the
show.
run of yourself with the success.
Yes.
First, you don't let me into the group of the thing. It's all gone wrong.
Of the action in the 2022 World Cup being held over there in the Middle East at a place called Qatar. Hi, it's me, Peter. That there is Andy Andrew, the knower of all things World Cup. I don't know why you're congratulating me. You live here too.
I do. But...
And they're over there in London enjoying himself and watching us stress out. It is Lars Sivertson. Greeting, Lars.
I did enjoy feeling your anxiety over the WhatsApp. Which manifested in just a total lack of replies when I put things in there. It was like, this is not time for chat. Watching.
Yeah, the only time he wrote anything is usually a cuss word, which is very atypical of him. He doesn't usually cuss on the WhatsApp, except
That's only for my OnlyFans.
I'm like
page.
throwing in things. This will be interesting for the show. Hey, look, I saw this tweet. That's kind of good. And you just shut up.
I didn't. Nobody told you to shut up. Here's the thing, because soccer largely is the only thing anybody knows about me. Anybody that has my phone number only communicates with me in moments like this. So while the game is going on, anybody who's like, oh, you know who I can ask this question to, or you know who I should say something to is Peter. My phone is like blowing up from people I haven't heard from in
to learn to
8 years.
Just let all those go. They need to learn to not text you during a time like this.
And so it's been a day. So yes, for those who have been living under a rock, or were in a meeting, or having surgery, or something or other, their internet was down. The USA won, Iran 0. Unbelievable how this, well, no, unbelievable is not the right word. That's too much of a cliche, Lars. It was not unbelievable.
Also, 2 out of 3 of us predicted it.
1-0?
Yes.
That's right. I said 2-1.
Yeah,
right?
you got carried away.
Yeah.
I did. Well, I really did think there would be at least 2 goals in this game.
What did I tell you leaving yesterday? I said, I don't think Iran has a goal in them.
Well, you were right. That's for sure. Can I quickly talk about the experience of the phenomena that takes place when added time is shown on a board? Because it like today, that 9 minutes, which ended up being 10 minutes, felt like an eternity. And I was literally thinking this every few minutes I'd look up and see that only 2 minutes had passed. I'm like, God darn it, I swear it's been 10 minutes already. That really is a thing.
Yeah, you can't start stressing about that kind of thing in the 80th minute anymore. Now you just have to wait, because you just know the 85th minute, those don't mean anything.
Yeah. In the 85th minute, I looked at myself and I went, there's at least 10, if not 15 minutes left in this game.
Right.
And that was
it's
pretty obvious.
2 completely opposite feelings if you have the lead or you're trying to tie the game.
I'm sure for anybody rooting for Iran, that 10 minutes went by like that.
Right.
And for everybody like me, it felt like forever. So, Lars, this is what we always turn to you in this moment. You're the unbiased foreigner football expert that knows all about the game and has a real cultured taste for it. What are your thoughts on US 1, Iran 0, US through to the knockout stage?
I thought you did well. I predicted a 1-0 win, and really my only notes would be that I kind of thought it would be sort of loaded in the other direction, in the sense that I thought you'd get the winner kind of late and it'd be nervy in the beginning, if you know what I mean. Whereas you actually got the goal in the first half. And what you maybe would think then would be that things open up a little bit. And when we think about the U.S.
Lars,
going forward,
we've lost your audio, sir.
Yeah, it mirrored a little bit, Peter. In the Wales game,
Hold on. Yeah, we were muted. Sorry, because of whatever happened on Lars's side, we got muted too. So
I blame
Lars,
the internet over here.
Back?
It's not very good. Yeah.
Sorry, nobody heard what you said, Andy, because the technical issue.
Lars,
what were you going to say, Lars?
I'll just start my Iran answer again for the purposes of editing in the podcast, shall I?
Please, yes.
Yes. Okay. Listeners to the live stream, this is how it happens when we goof and have to edit. I think watching this game, really, I was expecting a 1-0 win. We did say it on yesterday's show, but I was expecting more that it would be a long time coming, the goal. I kind of thought it would be one of those where you knock on the door for a long time and you finally get there in the end. Whereas actually you got the goal in the first half. And in all honesty, when you went 1-0 up in the first half, there was a side of me that thought, okay, this is going to open up now, and you're going to get plenty of chances to pick off Iran on the counter and score a couple of more goals. Now, Iran responded reasonably well and had some spells of possession in the second half, but never created big chances. And I guess maybe looking forwards in the tournaments, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, we're going to enjoy the moment, first of all. But in terms of like going far, there's a little voice in the back of my head that wasn't super impressed by how badly the US sort of tailed off in the second half and how deep you ended up becoming and not managing to control the game more, even though you were 1-0 up. There's a bit of psychology that plays into that. But just, again, Iran are no pushovers. They're not a soccer superpower. They don't have a lot of players in big clubs, but they are a team that can make it very, very difficult for you. And I thought you handled the situation well in many ways.
Look, it was a 50-50 proposition heading in, right? We all said 50-50 or maybe 51-49, and that's what it turned out to be. Ultimately, right? I mean, they were this close from going 3 ties in the first round and this close advancing. And it played out exactly in the game. Even though the goal happened earlier than we thought and all that, it really did play out like we thought. It was going to be tight. It was going to be ugly at times, and it was going to be stressful. And here we are. They advanced. That's all you want. I mean, ultimately, that's a victory, right? I mean, whatever.
I think so. And you look at how Iran played against Wales, which is a team that it's just Wales, but they have quite a few Premier League players in there. And Iran were notably better than Wales throughout that game, and they really weren't against you guys. You know, it was nothing like that. I didn't think.
Well, the English scored 3 against Wales and 7 against Iran and 0 against the United States. The United States have only given up 1 goal the entire tournament, and that was the penalty kick against Wales, and that wasn't even in the run of play. So
I think having seen all the games in this group, there's no doubt whatsoever that the US and England are the best 2 teams in this group and should progress. I mean, that's completely clear.
And also, in this game, Iran's expected goal number was 0.49. They had 1 big chance and only 4 shots the entire game.
Yeah, I think ultimately it was a little bit nervier because, because of rooting interests, right? I think a more objective fan or a neutral would have been watching the game and would have probably said, Iran didn't really get that close.
No, and I do think, because I think I sent you guys a WhatsApp note when the last 2 subs came on. Zimmerman came on and Shaq Moore came on. That substitution bothered me because I thought it was too defensive and ceding too much possession. But ultimately, holy crap, Walker Zimmerman was an absolute beast in the last 10 minutes.
Now, you were counting on that to make that substitution. My issue with that sub is, now it allowed Iran to contest the ball way closer to the goal, to the U.S. goal, right? And you take away all kinds of counterattacking threat. I mean, you just have Wright basically trying to do it on his own. And second,
air quote, try.
Yeah, he did it with 15 minutes to go, and then you add added time. It's almost like half an hour of having to do that, which I think is a little too early to go to that.
Zimmerman and Moore came on with 82.
Okay.
So there was 8 minutes left.
8 plus 7.
The Haji Wright was at 77, and Kellen came on in 65.
Yeah,
I also
just seemed like a long time.
thought you ended up getting very deep in the second half, more so. Okay. But the thing is, there is a lot of psychology to that. When you know you're riding a 1-0 lead, it's just natural to sort of withdraw a little bit to try to play safe, no?
Well, I also think this is indicative of just how many minutes have been put on so many of those key players.
That's a good point.
Musa played a full game again today. He clearly looked gassed out and was exerting well beyond 100% of his tank towards the end of the game. He got that late foul down on the left-hand side because he was just trying to grab at a player. Weston had to leave.
Yeah.
Tyler looked tired. They all looked exhausted, and I think that is a big part of why they just kept falling further and further back.
The minutes are catching up. In fact, with you guys, I said during the game, and I expected Iran to tire in the 75th minute because of their age, right? And the U.S. is younger, but it wasn't like that. The U.S. tired just as much. I mean, both teams did.
Yeah. And also, can I do the Pedri thing and play the unexpected angled pass and turn the conversation a little bit here?
Okay.
If we be being kind of too negative, and I said I'm the Grinch, I sort of took it in a slightly negative direction. This is, at the end of the day, a really big result in the history of the U.S. national team, right? You've gone out of your group. This is really good. This is really important.
I would say, just to keep things in perspective, it's the biggest win in 8 years since the last World Cup, but it's not the biggest win in national team history.
I wouldn't say the biggest, but it's a big moment. No?
It's a big moment, for sure.
Well,
but I think, part of growing as a soccer nation is growing expectations to not hope that you advance, but expect that you advance.
Agree.
And I hope that we're there at least.
Well, I think this win goes a long way to progressing and maturing to that level, which is I do think we all believe this was a 50-50 game. And this is a very young roster. In fact, today's 11 was the youngest 11 to be fielded in the tournament so far.
Oh, the starting 11, you mean?
Yeah. So I saw that tweeted somewhere. I assume it's correct. I probably shouldn't just believe anything I read on the internet. But I think to your point, Andy, watching the United States get through this game, if you're into video games and collecting experience points, you could just see that number tallying up in the corner for the United States over the course of the 100 minutes.
It's a good
because
take.
this is exactly the kind of game the United States needed to, and this is this weird soccer term that everybody uses, suffer through a game like this.
For this generation.
Yeah.
Because others have done it.
Yes, and again, we all know that this tournament for the United States is all about the next tournament.
Right.
And not only are the players learning something, Berhalter is learning too. Whether he continues on in this role or not is another thing we can talk about some other day. But man, a mountain of XP was earned today by the U.S. men's national team.
Also, can I put this forward? One of those things you guys were saying yesterday when we were previewing this game, I know it wasn't a classic goal, but you were looking for that moment where Pulisic had a big impact for the national team. And I think sort of injuring himself while scoring a super important goal for you guys, that's a good start, no?
Yeah, he sacrificed it all for the goal. Yeah, he really did.
Yeah, Peter, you're the one that brought it up, that you wanted, not expecting, you weren't expecting it, you wanted
Yes,
Pulisic to have his moment this game.
Yes, and that was the moment.
It wasn't a 30-yarder in the top corner, but that's, the desire
in a way,
and making a difference when it matters.
In a way, it's even more pronounced.
Yeah, and the beauty of the goal isn't, to your point, it wasn't a beautiful strike. It wasn't some clever, shifty move. It was spotting the opportunity and making the effort to get to the ball, because he had to clear a defender, get around a defender. He had to see it develop to make the opportunity.
Yeah, the final touch was all ugly and stuff, but the buildup was some beautiful soccer by the national team.
It really was.
It was a pretty goal.
Yeah, that is the moment Christian Pulisic has been waiting for. The fact that he also ends up getting injured. We don't know the severity of it at this point. Maybe he also needs a pancreatic surgery, like
well, he's posted a photo from
has he?
If not the hospital, then some kind of treatment room where he's chairing and. It's something about thinking he seems to suggest he'll be back, but I'm not sure that's a medical diagnosis.
So
you remember when I exploded my leg? I was like texting people in the ambulance saying, "I think this will be okay," and then it turned out it really wasn't. So
you never asked the player if they want to go back in the game. Although
him credit, how many drugs are you on, sir?
He tried. Pulisic tried to go back in, and he survived to the end of the first half, which was important because it didn't give up one of the substitution opportunities. That's something I don't think people have thought about, because with the way the substitutions played out over the course of the second half, Pulisic staying on for that last however many minutes it was and not eating up one of the three opportunities and saving it to the halftime sub. I thought
they could think it through and a little bit.
Well, yeah, but even if he knew in the moment, man, I'm just not going to be able to finish, saving the three substitution opportunities for the second half, I think ultimately is a talking point that I think is a big deal in terms of the long term of the play.
As of the recording of this podcast, that they're just saying it was an abdominal injury. He had to go to the hospital for scans, and they're not saying anything more than that.
Yeah,
that sounds promising, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But he's also got a ton of miles on him now, and a
lot of the guys do.
Yeah, they all do.
And this is where as we now enter the round of 16. This is where the teams with the depth start to.
You've been resting Jesus Ferreira for just this moment.
Yeah, there's the U.S. depth. Hey, hopefully we see him, but that's for another conversation, I guess. Not really about today because he didn't see minutes.
I was trying to see if anything here gives me a total of minutes spent. I've got to find it, and maybe I'll do it over the course of the. Yeah, so
I can find that.
Tyler Adams, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes. Holy smoly guacamole. Weston McKennie. Let's see, I don't have that in here.
I have
65, here. 77, 66. Yeah, what were you going to say, Lars?
I have the minutes. I have the number of minutes for you.
Let's save it for the next segment. Yeah. We can kind of run through the minutes in the roster and just how bad it is, or what the situation is running into it. Because one of the things that I think made the game probably caused Berhalter to shift and do some things differently than he intended to was that injury and the injury to Josh Sargent. Because, the game state changed when Pulisic, so he's got to bring in Aronson, who's kind of playing out of position on one side. Then Sargent gets hurt, so he's got to bring in Haji Wright, who, by the way, I am not impressed by that dude. That moment very, very late in the game when the ball comes in high and he just kind of doesn't even try to win the ball.
Yeah, or at one point doesn't. I mean, there's literally seconds left. Take the ball. This
and
is
go
the
to
very
the corner.
And go to the corner. I mean, I know, but hey, that's part of maturing as a soccer nation. I keep talking about that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Kill the game.
So, the substitution stuff, these are all elements of this game that I think once we've had some time to really sit and dissect it and rewatch the game, we'll talk about how the substitutions played out. But overall, who is your man of the match, Lars? If you were, I'll ask Andy because I think Andy watched.
No, I had the. Who do we anoint man? I mean, I give it to Tyler Adams again. I mean, he was in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
But he's gotten the previous two.
Man.
I might say, I know it's ridiculous because he went off, but you know what? Like in a game like this, when not a ton of things happens, I'd be inclined to give it to Pulisic. Honestly.
Yeah, the goal scorer.
Because it was a game. It was not a high quality game from a lot of players, and it just wasn't that kind of game. But these games in World Cups are about moments, and he was there in the moment.
I have a thought.
Can I make an argument for my submission for man of the match, Yunus Musa?
Okay, yeah, he ran out of gas, but yes, he played well.
Man,
the two guys, the two outside backs,
Dest
bombing.
Dest and Robinson was really good.
And Dest had the assist, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give it to Dest.
Dest is a good shout. I did notice that. I was double screening it, so I mean, you will have a more granular feel for this game than me, but I did notice a lot of positive involvements from Dest going forward.
I just want, if anybody goes back and rewatches the game, there's a moment, I wrote it down somewhere and I forgot to bring my notebook with me, which mental state I'm in. I don't know if you guys saw it. Lars, you probably didn't because you were double screening. Very early in the game, probably 10 minutes into the game, Iran tries to play a direct ball, and Reem is matched up against Osmuz. Is that his name?
Osmoon?
Mm-hmm. And it's essentially, there's another center back on the other side. Cameron Carter-Vickers is on the other side, and we need to talk about that decision, too, here in a second. But Reem makes a decision in that moment to make a step and cut to win the ball. If he misses that, Osmoon is in on goal by himself. Yep. And not only did he have the bravery to do it, he did it. And I think that is a moment in the game that isn't going to be talked about enough. But that is a critical moment because either A, he misses it and Osmoon's in, or that ball gets passed and he may not be able to keep up with Osmoon.
Yeah.
So it's like 15, 20 minutes into the game. It's really, really critical for anybody that gets to go back and rewatch
Reem has had a good World Cup.
He really has.
No doubt. That was a great call-up.
That's something I did notice through the double screening was that there were like several moments when I was just looking at Reem and thinking, you've done quite well there, man.
Yeah, and that was a wild card. I mean, nobody expected that call-up.
Somebody asked me the other day why Reem hadn't been used, and the only answer I can come up with is that because Berhalter, up until recently, had younger, faster players at his disposal in Mark McKenzie and Chris Richards. And when both of those guys went down, he really didn't have any other options at his disposal. And because Reem has been playing so well in the Premier League for Fulham, it just made it an easy thing. I think the brave call or the smart call or the relieving call was starting him and not going with somebody like Aaron Long, who had been training in the camp or so forth. But being brave enough to stick Reem in was a big deal. The call today to sit Zimmerman and put in Cameron Carter-Vickers, any opinions about that, Andrew?
I was surprised, but maybe it was because I didn't think he had a fair game against England. And then
Zimmerman?
And then he had that mistake in game one, and maybe he thought, okay, we need to upgrade this game, or maybe it had something to do with, how you defend a counter.
Yeah, that was brought up in the broadcast. Stuart brought that up.
How do you how do you best defend a counter?
Because Vickers faces that with Celtic on a pretty common basis. So that was an interesting point. I thought he was really good today. He had a couple of really nice. He used his body well. I don't know if you guys all completely worried when the shout came in late on the penalty call
Of course you worry because I don't think it would have been proper to give that the PK sign, but of course you worry because you never know, right?
Yeah.
It's the leaving the hand on the shoulder is so unnecessary, man. You're not really unbalancing the guy much, and you give him a chance to fall down, and then you never know what the referee does. So it's a dangerous thing to do. And can I just, before we move on, say, I probably won't, but I hope someone gets the opportunity to ask Tim Ream, dude, what have you done? Not I know because he was one of the people who got criticized the most back last time Fulham were in the Premier League. Now, I should say that time around the team was just a dumpster fire, and it's really difficult to be a center half if your team is bad.
It is, but he also didn't perform well.
He didn't. He looked like he didn't belong in that division at all.
And he fell out of favor on the national team as well.
Yeah, and now they've been in the Championship for a year. They're back up, and yes, he does have a very good holding midfielder in front of him for a club team. That helps. But he looks like a completely different dude, man. I mean, have you changed some kind of coach? I do know there are players who have private defensive coaches on the side. Is there something like this going on? Because he looks like a totally different player than he did, say, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. Which is kind of unusual for guys that age.
Hey, Lars. He's got a pretty damn good holding mid in front of him on the national team too.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, didn't mean to diss Tyler Adams. He's very, very good.
Don't diss my boy. I want to talk about when we come back.
Yes,
let's talk about him a little bit.
U.S. won a round 0. U.S. to the round of 16, 9 a.m. Central Time Saturday against the Dutch. We'll talk a little bit more about this game. We'll preview and kind of get into the Dutch a little bit about that and more here next on the Kick Around. We will call this part 2 of Matchday 9, the big U.S. win over Iran of Qatar Kick-Around. Sorry, I had to go get some water. I'm a little thirsty. My
been screaming a lot, shouting,
shouting
at the TV.
Really, I'm just, sweating a lot. I think I'm a little dehydrated. So if I pass out during the live stream, Andy, you have to take over.
I think, well, I mean, after you qualified for the group, some sort of chaos in the episode is expected. Honestly, I feel like we've been a little bit low powered here. Maybe you're too big to fully celebrate a win over measly Iran now, guys. It's too much of a big deal. Incredible energy on the comments for the streams that we're doing now, I have to say. A lot of whooping and cheering. I love to see it.
There were a ton of watching parties here in the Dallas area. I don't know, Andy, if you noticed. Andy and I are recording this back at the radio station, which is down by the American Airlines Center where the Mavericks and the Stars play, the arena. And there's several sports bars, but one in particular at the bottom of our building. Did you see how many people unloaded from that place?
Yeah, Yeah, lots of people coming out.
It was quite packed, and I'm sure all the Pedicolis, I'm sure, was packed. I'm sure Crossbar was packed. All the places were having a good time today.
Hey, before we go on with the U.S. Game, keep talking about that. Let me ask today's trivia question. I'm going to make it very quick.
Oh, Professor Andy's World Cup trivia question.
I think this is going to be easy, I hope. So it's just easy. It's very simple. Name the goalkeeper.
USA.
That has the record for the most saves in a World Cup game.
Oh, yeah.
Very easy.
Come on.
I knew you'd get that.
I got Eusebio yesterday, Andy. How do you think I'm not going to get this?
You guys complained that the questions were too hard, so I'm bringing it down.
Oh, no. Look at Lars. Lars looks a little puzzled about this.
Goalkeeper with the record for the most saves in a World Cup match.
Okay.
All right. Can we, before, and one...
Oh, yeah.
One thing that we saw today, particularly in the first half, the midfield was bossing.
Man,
right? They are such a good midfield.
Yeah.
And, you talked about Musa being man of the match and, of course, McKinney. But Tyler Adams, he's, the captain of the midfield, the captain of the team. And I want to bring something up real quick regarding Tyler. And
no spoilers for the quiz in the comments. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to stop watching. I like watching the comments for the streams.
Don't read the comments, Lars.
I got to stop it now. Come on.
Social media rule
Sorry,
number
Andy.
one.
I'm trying. I'm not going to interrupt people, but that was outrageous.
Yes.
Rude.
Well, yeah. I just don't even look at them. But yeah, and no peeking at no Googling either. But there is something I want to bring up in relation to Tyler that has nothing to do with his performance on the field, and it has to do with the performance in a World Cup because you're the captain of the team, and what you do off the field matters a lot, and guys look up to you, and the leadership is important. But let's remember, this guy is 23. Now, I don't know. We read about the press conference where he was asked certain questions, one of which, the Iranian journalist
berated him for mispronouncing
Iran. Fair enough. And then asked him some tough questions to answer, not related to soccer. And I had the opportunity to watch the video for the first time today and actually watch the whole the sequence, right, of the question and the answer. Let me tell you, he's 23. Let's not even get to the answer yet, but just how well-spoken the guy is. Just grammatically, speaks so grammatically well. He's eloquent. I mean, I'm more than twice his age, and I don't speak that well. I'm still trying to figure things out, how to speak well. He's easy to understand, but he's also so smart. And what he did, the answer that he provided, I mean, it's all ad-libbing in the moment, right? I mean, you're reacting to a question you don't know is coming. He's 23, and we're talking about geopolitical event type questions. These are hard questions. And it was I don't know if a PR agency could have come down and known what the question was and given him a better answer than what he gave on his own.
Lars, is there a player of that age anywhere on a national team in Europe that would have handled that question in the same way Tyler Adams did? That's a difficult question to ask you, but I'm just wondering if you can think of somebody off the top of your head that would pull that off.
They have some good honestly, they have some good speakers in the English national team right now, but I think they would have been provoked because I think that's the real thing here. It's not just that he gives an eloquent answer, it's that he understands that there's no point getting annoyed with this dude, which is the thing that's so impressive.
Not only that, he disarmed him. And Tyler has to answer. I mean, he's African American, so he's got to answer in a way that sounds good back home in many ways, not just dealing with Iran versus U.S., right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He has to answer to Iran. He has to answer for his teammates. It was amazing. And if you haven't watched it, please go find it. It will embolden you to vote for him for president next time. The other thing I want to talk about him on the field, because one of the things that I think this team has missed for a long time is a leader in the sense that they're not afraid to turn around and snap at somebody and tell them to get head right with ball, or you got to do this, or you got to play better, you got to make a better pass. And multiple times today, and I've seen it a little bit previously, but today, Tyler was very quick to turn around to Cameron Carter-Vickers early in the game and go, why aren't you stepping up, or do this or do that? And I just feel like
this team has needed that, and I do believe that's the reason why he's captain of this team now.
Yeah.
He's such a good leader. Jesse Marsh has had a ton of quotes about he knew this dating way back to the Red Bull days.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, he debuted as a professional with Red Bull at 16, and they were already saying for his age he was so mature. So.
All right, so the next thing I want to get into, and again, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm gleeful, all of this is great, but I do want to know what in the world is going on between Berhalter and Giovanni Reyna. Something weird is amiss because somebody pointed out to me after the game. Now, maybe this is out of context. We're reading into this too much. But in the post-game celebration, Giovanni goes over to Berhalter and tries to engage him in a, hey, how excited way. And Berhalter kind of cold shoulders him.
I haven't seen this.
Have you seen this?
No, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, and I mean it's slight, and again, maybe I'm reading into it. But here's another game. Now, again, this gets back to my point earlier. Did the way the injuries play out, are that the reason why he doesn't come into this game as a substitute?
The one thing you should think about is would they have been, not better off, but would it have been a good idea when you're going to bunker, because he's already going to bunker, right, with the other subs, you want to put speed up top, and a guy that you can just hit a long ball to and he can run.
Wouldn't you like a guy that could hold the ball and possess it for you, though? Because that's what he does.
Yeah, and he's also got speed.
I mean, he's not slow, and he's good. You know. Now here's his
I don't know.
Here's his problem. He's not He's not a consistently hardworking defensive type player, to the best of my knowledge of the guy.
I mean, is he irritating Berhalter in training because he's not showing defensive
I don't know.
work?
There's a whole weird thing going on the side. I don't know if you saw Eric Winalda's public apology yesterday. It's pretty clear that Eric Winalda got the earful yelling fest from Gio's dad, Claudio, because whatever Eric said on his radio show or podcast apparently made it pretty clear that he had been talking to Claudio, and Claudio passed him some information about what was going on and why he wasn't playing, and Eric repeated it publicly.
Yeah, which is bad.
Which was bad, and he had to backtrack it, apologize, say, I wish I had used some different language, but no matter what that is, it indicates there is something going on.
But my point is, it wouldn't have been a bad sub putting him in because he does have the speed for long balls, and he can hold the ball, like you said.
Yeah.
So
I don't have an answer, and people have been asking me. That's if of all the texts and messages I'm getting over the course of this last week or 10 days is what's up with Reyna, and I'm like, I honestly don't know.
Well, okay, here we go. If for any reason Pulisic does not come back, can't come back from this injury, at least in the round of 16, isn't he the natural replacement? I mean, this is Lars's point, right? Okay.
Yeah. It was Aronson who came on.
Well, Aronson came on for Pulisic.
I think at halftime.
Yeah.
Was it Aronson for Pulisic? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's who he subbed in at halftime.
And that's interesting to me because I mean, again,
see, that would have been the Reyna.
Yeah. Though I think it's also a little bit related to roles in the team, right? Because you have the midfield three, which is quite well balanced between, Tyler Adams being the holding guy and who does that job, McKennie sort of roaming around and doing his thing, and Musa a little bit of a different type. And then, Pulisic is the sort of more dribbly playmaker. He wants to cut inside from out wide. And you have a striker, and you have Weah, who's more of a speedy guy on that flank. And I guess you can make a point that Aronson is the second best at being the coming inside, dribbly man. But I'm clutching a little bit at straws because I do feel like it's a little bit weird. And I just had a quick glance now at Reyna's numbers for Dortmund, and defensively they're not that bad, really. I mean, he does
he's
tackle,
okay,
put in a reasonable amount of tackles and blocks and stuff for a young guy.
But he's not Brendan Aronson, and that work
who is
rate.
Just a Duracell bunny, isn't he, off the ball? Which is why he should be playing more, I think.
Well, he also, he helped create at least some semi-dangerous opportunities. But at the end, look, U.S. 1, Iran 0. The U.S. is through. That's all this. It's just like qualifying, right? It doesn't.
Of course.
Nobody's going to remember this now that we move on to the next thing.
No. At all. How well did the U.S. play against Algeria in 2010?
I don't.
Tell me anything about that game.
Except for Landon. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced anyone played well in that tournament.
You're probably right. Yes.
Even like Spain just passed it around forever, and it was terrible.
Right? I think that was the champions with the least amount of goals scored in the tournament?
Yeah. It was the Spain 1-0 and Spain 0-0 penalties.
Yeah. All right, so let's turn
Jabulani, the ball that didn't fly straight. What a time.
Right. Yeah,
what a time to be alive.
The Jabulani. By the way, did you guys see that Adidas announced, or FIFA or somebody announced today, that the Ronaldo goal that turned out to be Bruno Fernandes, they are claiming that the technology in the ball, which is the chip that tells them about offside, indicates that no contact with the ball was made.
Excellent. Yep.
And so that is the official part. So
Love it.
Technology to the rescue.
Eusebio.
Yes. Sorry. I'm going to put in my 30-second rant here because this is making me nuts. We were promised with semi-automated artificial intelligence VAR that we were going to get these computer-generated graphics and decisions on the instantaneously. Like we would know exactly how and why somebody was offside. And on that incident at the end of the first half where Weah scores that goal, that beautiful ball, they never showed the graphic on the broadcast.
They did a little bit later.
In the halftime show.
Yeah.
Not in the game context itself. And again, we can argue the binary nature of how offside's being called, but if you're going to have the technology, the people running this stuff has to figure out a way to show that, because the camera angle that they were showing, the live camera angle, clearly was like, are you sure he's offside?
Yes. I have another issue with that, though. He was offside because the knee was...
He was leaning forward.
Yeah, with the knee being the putt. But there was a game earlier this World Cup, I forget which one, that the shoulder was forward, but the foot wasn't, and so they called it onside because the foot wasn't offside. So I don't know what is right or wrong anymore, but the technology at least allows us to know that Ronaldo didn't touch the ball. That's important to me because Eusebio remains the king of Portuguese football.
Yeah, no joy for the follicle of God.
What were you going to say about the offside incident, Lars? You looked primed.
It's just...
Am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
Yes, well, obviously, but also...
Yes, shut up, in other words.
I know, it's just like, when you're watching it, just relax in the knowledge that the system has been engaged and they would have pulled it back if they were wrong. And also, if you can, in terms of what's offside and what isn't, like, if you know this, Andy, if you could score with it, then you could be offside with it.
Correct, but it seemed like earlier in the tournament there was one where it was just the foot, because I had read that the shoulders were counting too.
Well, the shoulders are kind of counting because
and in that case the shoulders were off, but they showed the foot.
The point I'm trying to make is if we're going to use the technology to make binary decisions that you can't see with your eye in the actual footage, they should be faster to the draw on showing you the stuff that are making the decisions.
And Lars is saying, trust that they got it right. They'll show you in due time.
Stop. When have we ever trusted any of this shit?
Well, now it's a robot.
Like, why now do we trust everything?
But like, I just think the priority for the guys controlling the VAR is getting the decision right and moving the game on as fast as possible.
It's a computer-generated graphic. Push the effing button and show it to the world. That's all I'm asking you to do.
Hey, do you remember how today's broadcast started with when the theme tune came on and when the thing with the screen? Like, pushing the right button is not always that easy.
Hi, Mom and Dad. This is my friend Lars.
Lars, I'm with you.
Okay. Let's move on and not argue and talk about the Netherlands, who got through today with a 2-0 win over their own Group 3 opponent, Qatar. I have not seen the game. I have no idea how it went. Lars, I think you probably watched it more than us. But I'm just going to say I have this weird vibe that the Dutch are there for the taking on Saturday morning.
I completely agree. Now, listen, they were better than they were against Ecuador, but, I mean, they couldn't be much worse. They were so lucky to get away with a 1-1 draw against Ecuador. They had 2 shots in that whole game over 90 minutes. Qatar had more against Ecuador. It was an embarrassing performance. And, listen, they were better, yes, but they were playing Qatar. And they were able to move the ball
around. Yeah, the public
around.
team.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had it with being polite to these guys. They're not very good.
Oh, thank you. All right. Lars has finally come around.
Well, they're just, no, but I just, there's a conversation to be had about Qatar, but let's first deal with the Netherlands. And they were able to move the ball around more like they want to. What a Louis van Gaal team will try to do by and large. They want to keep possession. They want to move it around, find spaces. But really, they don't look as slick an outfit as they should, and they didn't look as convincing as you should against a team like Qatar. And you're still relying. The only thing they really got going for them, in terms of comparing them to the other big teams in the tournament, is that the young man Cody Gakpo is having a bit of a moment. He was the young attacker who was linked with a few Premier League teams in the summer, ended up staying in Holland, and has just been in outrageous form in the Dutch league, got picked for the team and is starting. And because of Memphis Depay only being half fit, they really needed him to come up for them, and he really has. He looks fantastic. And,
yeah, by the way, you were the one that told us to look out for him. And he's the first Dutch player ever to score a goal in each of the group stage games.
Wow, that's impressive.
And one of the few in the World Cup history to do that.
And this is not a fluke. I mean, his league form going into this, in 14 appearances for PSV, he had 9 goals and 12 assists. Now, I know the Dutch league goals and assists can be kind of like dog ears. They're worth not the same as in others. But still, when you have that kind of form, you're a young guy, you're sort of up and coming, and you just burst into a tournament and you score every game. There's something going on with this kid. He's going to get a good move to a really big club at some point, and he's certainly someone to worry about for the US.
So the thing about the Netherlands and the dynamics of their group play, they haven't looked great, but they're one of those teams, they do enough to get out of group play this time around. They've conceded 1 goal. They're one of these teams that it's like, ultimately, how taxed were they to get out of this group? Right? And so who was taxed more in group play? I'll put it this way.
In terms of the game coming up Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh, the U.S., absolutely.
Right. And so that's something.
But are they also more exhausted?
The U.S.?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, taxed. Okay. I thought you meant
Taxed.
tested.
No,
okay.
taxed.
Oh,
Tested,
yeah.
both, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it lends to fatigue. Netherlands is a little deeper. I don't want to get into a preview here. But I'm saying, don't underestimate the Dutch. I know that we're low on them now because they didn't really show much in the group stage, but also they didn't really have to.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do the Dutch not help Berhalter in terms of rotating players? Because the Dutch are going to come and play. Maybe this is the Jesus Ferreira game, right? Because now you can play a guy that can connect and break lines. You're not needing a big body to try to run in behind.
You're not breaking down a low block.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not. And maybe this is an opportunity for Giovanni Reina, right? And this is where and maybe at the same time, you can rest a Weston McKennie or a Yunus Musa and throw somebody else up front. Maybe you go to a double pivot, you go to a 4-2-3-1 and move some people around and utilize some of the rested legs that you haven't used so far.
Intriguingly, Louis van Gaal, combative as ever, was asked in the post-match press conference. Well, he got a little bit defensive. He was asked if the Netherlands are going to have to up the quality and speed of their game going forward.
They will have to.
By a presumably unimpressed Dutch journalist.
Yeah.
And he replied, I don't agree with you, and I'm not going to expand on that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You have a different perspective to me. Why don't you write down that it's terribly boring? If you think it's boring, why don't you go home? Van Gaal has come out swinging.
Yeah, it's very him though, right? That response is very him.
Yeah,
so how do you think they'll approach playing the U.S.?
So the intriguing thing is that they've kind of switched up their midfield in really every game here. Because and trying to find the combination of players that works for them. You remember in the first game they started with that weird Berghuis next to Frankie De Jong and Cody Gakpo as a 10. So there's no ball winners at all in sight in that midfield, and they could never get that game under control against Senegal. And it wasn't until right towards the end where they switched it up and brought on 2 other midfielders. They scored 2 goals, and against Ecuador again. With Frankie de Jong now next to Koopmeiners and with Davy Klaassen being brought in. But again, they were very poor and produced almost nothing. Against Qatar, Martin de Roon came in next to David Klaassen and Frankie de Jong. My point is, Van Gaal is clearly not sure about his best midfield here.
Yeah.
Like he's changed it several times and brought in several types of players. And I don't think this was like rotation for the sake of the opponent. It feels like he's scratching around trying to find a midfield that really works. And having watched their games, I don't think he's found it.
Yeah, and this is going to be a midfield battle. And, not advantage U.S. U.S. has a good midfield. It's their strength. The issue is the minutes.
But De Jong's, who's played for all three, he's got a ton of minutes on his body. He didn't get subbed out until like close to the end.
He
is
so crucial for them. He's the one guy that
I mean, our preview on the Dutch were slightly average team, but they've got an extraordinary midfielder in De Jong, and they have a very effective forward in Memphis Depay. Now, Depay has never gotten totally fit, but for Depay, see Cody Gakpo, who's having a bit of a breakthrough moment and is a real danger. My concern with the US, I think you'll be competitive in terms of the play. My concern is whether you'll score goals. Because they do have a reasonable defender in Virgil van Dijk who's looked on it, and with Jurriën Timber and Nathan Ake either side of him. So he's got like big Van Dijk in the middle, and then their right-footed, slightly more mobile guy to the right, and a left-footed, slightly more mobile guy to the left. It's a very well-balanced back three, and the guy in the middle is very good. And so you're going to have to sharpen up a little bit up front if you're going to create enough chances and score goals against these guys.
All right, well, we will obviously have a lot more preview of U.S. the Netherlands coming up on Friday's show. The game is Saturday at 9 a.m. In Dallas time, 10 a.m. Eastern. And so
that's the broadcast window for soccer in the U.S.
This is so after the U.S. and England got 14.2 million on Fox, I'm dying to know what that number is today. I know it's a different day. It's a work day. It wasn't a holiday. I'm really interested to see how that number, but the number on Saturday could be super bonkers.
Yep.
All right, we're running long. We will take our second break, and when we come back, we will talk about we'll just briefly mention the other games of today and preview tomorrow, and Andy's trivia question next. Here we are for part 3 of Matchday 9 of Qatar KickAround, our nightly wrap-up show of the action at the 2022 World Cup. Let's just, because we talked about it earlier, and I think everybody tried to spoil it in the comment section, let's get Professor Andy's World Cup trivia question out of the way.
It was a very easy one today. Who has the record? Which goalkeeper has the record for the most saves in a World Cup match? Peter, I know you know. Lars?
I got it. It's Tim Howard versus Belgium in 2014.
Good. That's right. In the round of 16 game, the last time the U.S. was in a World Cup, they got to the round of 16 and played Belgium. And Tim Howard needed 15 saves to help the U.S. keep it 0-0 after 90 minutes. Did you know that? Do you remember that game went into extra time?
You and I were downstairs in the plaza in front of the giant video walls with 3,000 listeners to the radio station on live radio.
Belgium went up 2-0. The U.S. got one back. And then in the dying moments, there's a certain U.S. national team forward
Chris Wondolowski.
that had the goal open and shot it over.
You were there for only one thing, Wando.
Yeah.
And he shot
He
it.
had one job.
And you bonked it.
Yeah. Anyway, and he's done great things in MLS.
I remember that team fondly, and I also remember during that tournament, an acquaintance of mine who works at like a talent scout in European football actually messaged me and get these USA, man, a few of these players, and and he wasn't talking about the obvious guys. He was like Beckerman. If that guy was like 4 or 5 years younger, man, I could get him could get him an incredible contract in Europe. I think there were some people who like, you know,
he was a good player.
Zuzi, you know?
Oh, yeah, Graham Zuzi, yeah.
I think some of those guys had the kind of tournament that if they'd just been a couple of years younger, they would have gotten big contracts in Europe out of it. But people are weird about age over here when they sign players.
Whose record did he break?
Oh, that I do not know.
Gordon Banks.
I should have known that.
Yeah,
I might get
that's
deported.
why I asked you. All right. Peter, back to you.
The other games today, Ecuador lost to Senegal. I'm a little disappointed. Now, I'm disappointed because I've really enjoyed Ecuador in this tournament, being a young team. I like the way they're just kind of got a fun style to them. But Senegal is a pleasing result for them because I wrote them off when they lost Sadio Mane. And boy, watching them today just makes me realize how much better or what a contender they may have actually turned out to be had they had Sadio Mane. Because, man, Senegal's really good.
Yeah, it's weird, like, because they've made it out of the group, and it's a great achievement from them, but it feels weird taking it in that direction. But yeah, that was my first instinct after the game was, it is really frustrating because they're a fully fit and firing Sadio Mane away from being a team that I really think could go seriously far in the tournament. But without that, I worry that there's not quite enough edge up front. But they do, we spoke about it before the tournament, they have a really solid defense with Koulibaly and Diallo. And they have that midfield with Idrissa Gana Gueye, who's you know, tireless and always running, and Pop Gay as well, who's also a good player.
Sarr.
Yeah, and then up front, with Sarr and Boulaye Di, was also a reasonable forward.
How is Sarr still playing at Watford?
That's weird. Watford usually pretty happy to sell, but they've dug their heels in and they've set a price for him that no one's matched so far. I feel like that's the kind of player Spurs of 10, 15 years ago would have picked up. You know, they used to have a good eye for guys like that. Anyway, Senegal, very much an exciting team. And we'll get to England, but I think they're a team who, if England have a bit of a bad day, they're entirely capable of upsetting them, I think, because they have some qualities that the English aren't, they don't love playing against.
Well, it took them 45 minutes, but the English did end up putting 3 past Wales in the second half. It was funny. We were chatting at halftime, and I had 2 screens going on, but I had watched so little or looked over so little. I had purposely moved it out of my line of sight, so I'd have to go look at it to see to get an update on Wales-England. But it was interesting that at halftime, you two, who were watching it more than I was, were talking about how bad Wales was. And I'm like, well, then why is it still 0-0? And it was just a matter of time, Lars.
Yeah, I think like the first half, this was kind of like a dispiriting game in a number of ways because Wales were not good, but also England were not impressive either, really. I mean, they did get there.
Well, I think, tell us this, because I didn't watch the game closely, but every time I would glance at it, it was England and Wales' end of the field by the goal, and it was still 0-0. So I think that's our question is, why did it take so long for them to get a goal?
Yeah, they were a little bit one-paced, and I think, I was initially happy because I'd seen reports that Henderson was going to start, and I thought, oh no, they're going to take out Bellingham, and then it turned out they were starting Henderson, Rice, and Bellingham, and I thought, well, that's better, but it turned out like against this Wales team, you really didn't need all 3 of the midfielders in there. You could have easily taken one of them out and put in Saka or Grealish or someone slightly more funky to help you unlock that defense. But they did. I mean, eventually they got there. It took initially a great free kick from Marcus Rashford, and then immediately afterwards, with Wales a little bit rattled from conceding, they went forth and scored another one, and that kind of settled the game. And Wales just didn't present much of a challenge after that. Rashford added the third. That was kind of a slightly fortunate shot that went through the goalkeeper's legs. But Rashford looking good is positive. I mean, if you're looking for positives from England, him looking good and confident, and he's one of the sport's good guys, so you're just watching him be happy again is something that you feel good about.
All your Man United boys are like tearing it up in World Cup.
Ten Hag effect, man.
Yeah. and what Gareth Southgate will say, listen, we qualified top of the group, conceding conceding 2 goals, but like conceding no goals against the US or Wales. And we're feeling pretty confident about where we are, but there's still a sense that this team is kind of finding itself a little bit. And I'm not massively convinced. I think this is a team like you guys showed the world. You can shut down this midfield, just work hard and put pressure on them, and they're not good enough technically to pass their way through it. And the defense has a mistake in it, and they have a lot of firepower up front. But I really think on their day, Senegal can make life very difficult for this England team.
All right, tomorrow there are 4 games, and again, it's all about the groups being paired up and playing simultaneous. The disgrace of Hyun at play. I like it.
That's right.
Yes. All right, so the 9 a.m. games, Dallas time, Australia and Denmark, and Tunisia and France. This is Group C?
Group D.
D is the early one.
Starts it off. Yeah.
D. Why do they do that? Why?
I don't know.
Do you know how they make that decision?
Why are we playing the World Cup in the winter?
Oh, okay.
Why?
Okay.
Well, in this group, France has gone through.
This is pretty snoozy stuff today or tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we'll get to Group C, which is the one group that has all kinds of chaos heading into the group, but we're not there yet. So France is through. They play Tunisia. Tunisia does still have a chance if they beat France, and the Australia-Denmark match ends up in a draw, or if Denmark doesn't win by more than one, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Tunisia is going to have a really difficult time getting out of group, and it comes down to Australia-Denmark. Australia with a draw, unless Tunisia gets through. A win gets them through, and Denmark, of course, has to go for the win.
Man, I'm going to be totally bummed out if Denmark doesn't get out of this group, because I'm going to look like an idiot since I had them going to the final.
Yeah, so on these 2 games, first of all, Tunisia, France, not the most exciting, but there's some spice here. Firstly, one's in the fact that France are going to rotate heavily, so you get to see some of their squad guys and what they can do to try to earn a spot later on. I increasingly now think this is a squad that'll go far. I've kind of reversed a little bit on my preseason prediction there. But the big thing here is Tunisia. They've got 10 guys in the squad who are born in France. So I mean, there's going to be some added spice to this occasion for them. And so even if it's not like super exciting in that way, I think that's one to look out for. Whereas when it comes to Australia, Denmark, man, you've got to score some goals. Where are your goals? Like, your strikers are all bad. You need to find goals. And I listen, they're much better than Australia. They're a much better team in a number of different ways. But I have this nightmare on behalf of my Nordic brethren that they could have one of those games where they have 20, 25 shots, but none of them actually put it away because they don't have a striker.
How many teams are we saying that about this World Cup?
Yeah, it's creepy,
where
isn't it?
are they going to
weird.
find the goals? Yeah.
All right. Is that the fact that it's being played in the middle of league seasons?
I think I wonder if there's just a global striker shortage. I think we're just not. There's a lot of false nines, and everyone wants to be an inside winger. And are we developing the number 9s these days?
And I think it's easier with short preparation times. It's easier to work on a defensive unit, defensive shape than it is, more complicated.
John Mueller of The Athletic wrote a really good Twitter thread about this point, which is without the amount of preparation time, what you can do is set up defenses pretty easily, but what is impossible to do in that amount of time is work on all of your sequences. And
I just said that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. All of that stuff that you're talking about that's the stuff that's hard to do when you don't have any time to pull it off. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
No, that's...
But I still expect Denmark to get through.
This is very much like a big picture, mega brain type of thing. But I would love for someone who's smarter than me and has an even bigger contact network than me to do a massive piece and interview people at academies here and there and ask why we're not bringing through more strikers. And I wonder if there's a thing where everyone wants to be the inside wide player. Look at a guy like Cody Gakpo. There can be reasons why he's playing out wide. But he's really tall. He's very technically gifted and 6'3", 6'4". I swear to God, 10, 15 years ago, some youth coach would have turned it into a number 9, and that would have been it. But he's coming through now as a wide. Another one of those wide forwards who wants to go inside.
This is so weird, and I don't mean to make this about Manchester United, but that's a club that clearly needs a number 9, a traditional striker, and they keep getting tied to all these players that are more wide players and not traditional strikers. Anyway, that's a whole other.
We're going very rogue on an episode that's already gone long, and that's my fault. I apologize.
All right, the 1 p.m. games are, as Andy said, Group C. Poland faces off against Argentina, and Saudi Arabia against Mexico.
Yeah, so this is more chaotic. Actually, it's less chaotic because a win, if you win, like any of these teams, win and you're in. Mexico needs to win and have a little help, but Poland, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, all with a win get through. The issue, the chaos comes in if one tie, one game is a draw, another game has a winner, or all games in a draw, and blah blah blah. So then it gets a little bit chaotic. But it'll be fun to watch these two matches being played at the same time because there's an element of chaos tomorrow with this.
We are living in a universe where the U.S. gets out of a group, which is more difficult. I think it's fair to say okay, let's do this. Is Group C as difficult or equally as difficult as the U.S.'s Group B?
I think because of what Saudi Arabia showed.
Yeah.
Because they showed up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more. But then Poland.
And also Wales have been worse than expected.
Right. Poland better than Wales. Saudi Arabia better than Iran.
Well, my point is, we're living in a world where we may see the U.S. get through the round of 16 and Mexico not.
Yeah. So tomorrow's match, Poland-Argentina. Argentina needs to win to ensure advancement. A draw doesn't necessarily get them through, and a loss doesn't necessarily get them through. And then Saudi Arabia, Mexico, both need to win to ensure advancement. So teams can't play for a draw tomorrow. They all have to play for the win, except for Poland, who can probably advance and will advance with a draw.
And intriguingly, as Peter has just observed, we keep saying this and that team doesn't have a striker. Poland has that and not much else. It's like
right.
It's
the
like
opposite.
The team from
exactly.
opposite world, yeah.
Right, yeah, very good point.
The other thought, just related to all CONCACAF-y things, we also are living in a world where the U.S. may be the only team from CONCACAF of the 4 that get out of the group stage.
Yep.
And that would be interesting based on how qualifying went and all that other stuff.
Look, Mexico has it tough. They have to beat Saudi Arabia and hope that one of the two teams in the other game stumbles by more than 1 goal.
Got to give this region loads of extra slots. That's what this tournament needs.
How about 3 more slots in next World Cup? Why don't we just increase the number of teams to 48? By the way, we shall talk about this on a podcast when there are no games. 64 is the way to go. Single elimination.
No, please.
Yes.
Okay, you want to go March Madness.
And then have it every 2 years. Let's do this.
Andy's brought this up before, Lars, the idea of doing 64 nations every 2 years, single elimination knockout bracket, just like American college basketball does in March.
I know we're going to have a full pot on this maybe, but I would really miss this league phase when the teams have a couple of games to find their feet and grow into it.
Yes.
It's perfect the way it is.
It is. I totally agree.
Somebody asked me in a text today about, wait a second, if U.S., Canada, and Mexico are all getting clear passes into the 26, what happens? And I said, what you don't know, and this is why I asked you this question to clarify it, is that in the next World Cup, we're going from 32 to 48 teams. Yeah. And I said what that means is 16 groups of 3.
That's the most likely scenario. Yep.
And he was like, curious question mark quizzical face emoji back to me, and I was like, don't worry about it. Let's just get through this thing first, and we can start whining about 26 later.
It's going to be,
It is. Okay, Lars.
You know what that format means? There's
yuck
going to be
yuck.
Yeah, there's going to be a Group P.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I mean, that's how...
The format means there's going to be a team in each group that is going to get...
That's going to be the golden group.
That is going to get trucked.
Lars.
It is.
Lars caught it. Okay, Lars, thank you very much. Thanks for being our supportive, unbiased resource about USA-IRN.
Can't believe I was the one who had to pep you guys up and say, be more positive. You got out of the group. My country can't even qualify.
That's just a byproduct.
And we have an ice troll up front, and we can't do it.
That's true, yeah. Wow, man, if the U.S. just had Erling Haaland, we'd be winning the World Cup this year.
Lots of countries, if they had that. That's another country with a 9.
Except we can't even call. Listen, in fairness, like one of our last sort of international breaks, we played an actual unemployed man in goal. So clearly we have some issues aside from the striking position.
Hey, wait a second. Portugal's playing an unemployed man at striker.
Yeah,
their 9 is unemployed.
Yeah, that's true.
Slightly different scenario.
All right. Thank you again, Lars. We will speak to you again tomorrow for Match Day 10.
Cathartic to hang out with you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Andy, thank you, my friend. We'll be live on the ticket tonight at 7. All you watching the live stream, thank you. For those listening to the podcast, thank you. Before you go to bed tonight, kneel down and say your bedtime prayers. Include Christian Pulisic's guts, because I think he needs it.
Abdomen.
His guts.
The same thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm just giving you the scientific term.
Yeah, Andy's all about correcting me all the time. He's like,
Get it right, Peter.
anyway, we love and adore you. Go on. We'll speak to you tomorrow for Match Day 10. Get stuck in and win your 50s.